Hi, I do have a I actually have a a philosophy of art and beauty and aesthetics playlist on here on YouTube, but I have not. I got like maybe one, maybe two videos in there. So I don't really have a whole lot. I've not done a whole lot in that kind of philosophy, but here I'm gonna kind of start that because we have a half price bookstore which is not too far from here. It's actually in Millard, but well, I'm in Papillion, Nebraska, and that half price bookstore is in Millard, which is not that far. But I was in there, and they have a pretty small philosophy section, about maybe, I don't know. Maybe like two or three bookshelves, which I guess is more than I would expect to find in you know in other places. But I was looking in there, and they get they get used books in there on a regular basis. So I was looking in there one day, and I found this little this little beauty. Um, Philosophies of Art and Beauty. This is a anthology, actually, which is good. Um, this book here has a lot of different figures in philosophy of art in here. It has Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, Augustine, Shaftesbury, Kant, Schelling, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Croce, Dewey, and Heidegger. Heidegger is the last one that it has in here, and it's the origin of the work of art. Now, this book, as you can see, it's a little bit old here, but I have no problem with that. And I've read the stuff in Plato in this book, and I've read other things on Plato that have to do with aesthetics, and I've actually have this as well as two other videos I'm going to make on the aesthetics of Plato. And this one I want to do with respect to poetry. Now the poetry, you're gonna the whole poetry thing is stuff that first of all, I read this out of Ion. Ion is a smaller dialogue that was earlier in life, and there's also the Republic, and I think the Phaedrus, as well as the Phaedo, and others have and also many others that have stuff in there about poetry and poems and the Rhapsode and people like that. But Ion, it has to do with the young Socrates and this Rhapsode named Ion, and he comes from being at this festival where he would perform these he would perform the epic things, the epics of Homer, like the Odyssey and the Iliad. And these are just this person Ion, he has a fascination with Homer. And you would think, like, the common poet, or the common actor, is not going to be influenced by just one poet or one actor. If we see a poet, you're gonna have him be influenced by many poets, and if it's an actor, you're gonna be influenced by many people in many plays and movies. But in this dialogue, Ion talks about how he's fascinated with only Homer. People like Hesiod and others bore him, and he finds interest in only Homer. But the reason that this is something that matters is because Socrates takes him upon, questions of, he's basically trying to figure out this whole idea of what I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but Techni. It's skilled knowledge, and he's trying to differentiate this here as well as in other dialogues between that skilled knowledge and divine inspiration. And what he comes to do here is he comes to lead Ion down the path of making him basically admit that he's only divinely inspired by Homer, and he's not this skilled poet. He's not a skilled actor. He's not. He's just inspired by this one poet or this one writer. But the real question that I start with the whole dialogue of Ion is because there's questions in Plato's aesthetics that have to do with art and beauty, of course, imitation or mimesis, or poetry. Poetry is something that comes up in many different dialogues of Plato, and mostly what I'm trying to discuss here, what I'm trying to preface with is that we have actual art for one thing. We have art, we have skilled knowledge, and we have divine inspiration. And Socrates leads Ion down the path of discussion to where he leads him to basically believe that he's only divinely inspired. Well, he reluctantly believes this, but he basically leads Ion to admit that he's divinely inspired rather than a possessor of skilled knowledge. He's possessed by this writer, Homer. But the question here is, the main question here is, is poetry a form of art? Is the question I really want to entertain. And this is something that we will find in lots of different ones and lots of different dialogues. Like, for instance, in this one, we will he talks about artistic inspiration in the Ion as well as in the Phaedrus, and he also talks about different kinds of poetry in the Republic, and also in a part of the Republic he talks about whether the idea of poetry should be thought of as an art in this new government. And first of all, he talks about art as this kind of form. If you're familiar with Platonic metaphysics, you'll know what the idea of a form is. A form is basically like, for instance, redness. Redness is a sort of characteristic that according to Plato would be a form, and you will see the redness you will see this form instantiated into particulars, and this is why we have this is what gives us the sort of idea of a universal in metaphysics. Like, we'll see red here, and we'll see red. I have red on the bed here, and there's red everywhere, and that's basically, according to Plato, that's basically instantiations of the one form. Now, beauty is of a certain form. Now, beauty is as high of a form as the good is. Well, it's almost equally high, and and as what I'm going to make two other videos. One is going to be specifically on the forms and beauty, as well as on in imitation. But the real question is poetry. Where does poetry fall within Platonic aesthetics? But basically when I guess I'm scrambled because I've read a few different dialogues, and I've thought about, and I've read different kind of ideas. I'm trying to put them into one idea here. Art is something that is basically a skill, and a skill like that is put onto something that will find some sort of thing that pleases us that we can't really put our finger on. And then music, Plato also kind of groups into that category, because in music also you're gonna see something that's very, very in Kantian terms agreeable, but it's way even more than that. But then we have poetry on the other hand. If you read poetry, there's something that there's obviously something there, which is why you read it. But what it boils down to is that in poetry you can look at all those words and use synonyms of those words and break that poem down into ordinary language, to where you have just a couple sentences which just say a random thing. In that case, you have putting your finger on that thing that was agreeable to you, and that is one reason among a few why Plato through Socrates is really reluctant against making poetry a form of art form. It's because you can break it down and understand it and understand why it's agreeable. And I use the word agreeable because in Kant's critique of the power of judgment, the word agreeable is used to describe things that essentially are agreeable, like that steak is good and it's agreeable, but it can't be attributed that high of a characteristic of as beauty, because it's not that it's not that much, it's not how it's described at all. So essentially, through these dialogues, that the concept of poetry and divine inspiration is found. Now, divine inspiration is a different thing, I guess, but I don't know why I use that word so much. But that is not art, according to Plato. Poetry itself is not art, and often it can be referred to as divine inspiration, or just being inspired, because Ion was inspired and basically possessed by Homeric epics. And it wasn't like it was skilled knowledge in poetry or acting or being a rhapsody as it was. So that is essentially what poetry is to Plato. It's not art. And I guess my question is to you: do you think, if you people who are poets, if there's anybody here who are poets, who write poetry on a regular basis, and do it for your own purposes or whatever, when you finish it, do you find something in it that is similar to when you look into a beautiful painting? For instance, like if I look at one of the paintings by Georgia O'Keeffe, I see why it's beautiful because, I mean, I guess I'm referring to one of them that is a flower, of course. But it's a flower. I get it. It's a flower. But I look into that painting, and I can't really put my finger on why I'm so pleased by it. Why I can't really figure out why is that pleasing. I mean, it's a flower. Why is it that pleasing? But then on the other hand, if I read a poem and I don't understand it, I can still break it down and figure out that it's just a sentence. But I find in it only in Kantian terms, it's agreeability rather than art form and beauty. So I think that the idea of poetry as a skilled knowledge, or and versus art as a skill and knowledge, are two different things that should be separated, because poetry has, in Kantian terms, agreeability, while art, most of the time, has more than that.